Thank you to the CAST team for organizing this very important and highly relevant West Summit, and also warm greeting to all the participants for joining this session. My name is Moeko Saito-Jensen. I'm a UNDP environmental policy specialist. So the purpose of this session is to talk about sustainable consumption and production and circular economy in Cambodia. I'd like to briefly introduce speakers and objective of session. So for this session, we will have all 4 speakers, including myself. We will have all the presentation first and the question later. So please kindly write your questions in the chat box. So the first speaker will be the Mr. Clemens Beckers. Mr. Clemens is the attaché for natural resources and climate change at the delegation of the European Union in Cambodia since 2016, where he also covers environmental issues and green economy. His talk will cover the European Union's assistance for green economy and also SGP. And the second presenter will be Excellency Dr. Ngin Lina. Her Excellency is the Deputy Secretary General Secretariat of the National Council for Sustainable Development at the Ministry of Environment. She has played a very important role for development of a circular economy strategy and also the sustainable consumption and production roadmap. And then myself, the Moeko Saito-Jensen, environmental policy specialist, I will talk about how to promote promoting the circular economy measures for plastic waste management, which has been talked a lot about during this West Summit. And the last speaker will be Dr. Kathrin Eitel. Dr. Eitel is a cultural anthropologist and currently works as a research associate at the Institute of Cultural Anthropology and the European Ethnology of Goethe University, Frankfurt, Germany. Between 2017 and 2019, as a part of her PhD work, she conducted extensive fieldwork on the recycling economy and interview many informal waste pickers. So she will provide in-depth insight into the informal waste picker and also share recommendations how informal waste pickers can be integrated into a formal circular economy the model. So with this note, I'd like to invite Mr. Clemens from EU. The floor is yours. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Moeko. I hope you can hear me. I have to check. Yeah, good, excellent.
Very clear, thank you.
Thank you. I have to go back to my notes. Thank you, Moeko, and Your Excellency Ngin Lina, Deputy Secretary General of NCSD, dear Kathrin Eitel, distinguished guests, dear participants, good morning. I'm very glad to be here with you today. I don't have slides and I will be short. It's really more like introductory remarks before we have the main presentations. And I would like to present briefly about the cooperation of the EU and Cambodia on greening the economy. We have a couple of projects ongoing to support the Cambodian government, but also civil society stakeholders on greening the economy. We will hear more about this later from Excellency, who will present the SCP roadmap that is currently drafted. This has been funded by the European Union under the EU Switch Asia program. And the technical assistance is being done in cooperation with UNEP, UN Environment Program. We also have a couple of other projects under the EU Switch Asia program. The EU Switch Asia program is a quite large regional program of the EU covering more than 20 countries in Asia, all with the aim to support sustainable consumption and production in Asia. So we believe very much also in the potential for further integration into regional bodies. For example, for Cambodia to integrate further into ASEAN. Also, and in particular, to promote the SCP agenda. We believe this regional approach, the development of regional markets for more sustainable products is one of the key opportunities Cambodia has to green its economy, and we really are very ready to support this, and we already do so. We already support so. We have also under the EU Switch Asia program a project with the Global Green Growth Institute, where we support energy efficiency in the garment sector. So all of you will know probably that the very big importance of the garment industry for Cambodia's economy overall, and in terms of providing jobs for people, in particular for women. So we are really committed to help increasing competitiveness of the garment industry in Cambodia through more greening, for example, through more energy efficiency. You might know that a lot of the international brands who buy garment in Cambodia increasingly are committed voluntarily at their corporate level to green, to become more resource efficient, and to source the energy which is used in their products to make sure this energy is renewable. So to have really a reduced ecological footprint. All this obviously comes from the changing consumer preferences in the markets they deliver. Including many European markets, there is really probably you know that. So this is really, I think, an opportunity for the country that we want to support to grasp and to develop. We also have overall, we have a big focus on fisheries in our bilateral relations, development cooperation relations with Cambodia. So we do a lot in fisheries, and obviously also there are links to sustainable consumption and production. We have, for example, support the use of solar energy in agricultural and fishery value chains in the region around the Tonle Sap Lake. So to make sure more the potential for using solar solutions for the energy needs in fishery value chains, that this opportunity is better addressed. We also supported the national energy efficiency policy of Cambodia, which is currently under review. And yeah, I don't want to be too. I promise to be short. We have other things that relate also to green economy and sustainable consumption and production. Our support on forestry, biodiversity, about climate change. I mentioned a bit our support in energy sector. But again, I don't want to be too detailed. Maybe to already come closer to my end is to give you the prospects for our future cooperation. We are just as we speak about to prepare our next 7-year program with Cambodia. So we work in 7-year programming cycles, and we're just about to start a new one. And there again, we want to have a renewed and even stronger focus about a green economy and greening for competitiveness, to make sure the opportunities of less ecological footprint for business are better harnessed here in Cambodia. So really to really make this narrative or this line of argumentation better understood and more widely communicated, that environmental protection is not necessarily detrimental to economic growth and development, rather the opposite. In many cases, in these cases, we really want to better develop. It is beneficial and really mutually supportive. All right. Thank you so much. I really look forward to the interesting presentation, and I hope we will go into much more detail what sustainable consumption production means, and looking forward to that, and also looking forward to active participation from participants or whoever. So very happy to take questions later on. Thank you very much, and over to you, Moeko.
Thank you very much, Clemens. It's great to hear about the wide range of activities that the EU is supporting for promoting green economy, and also great to hear that the EU is preparing the next 7 years of a program and focusing on green economies and then competitiveness. We're looking forward to working together in this effort as well. So next will be the presentation by Excellency Dr. Lina. As I mentioned, that she has been the key person developing the circular economy strategy policy, and also the sustainable consumption and production roadmap. So Excellency Dr. Lina, would you prefer managing your slides, or should I upload a PowerPoint?
I think it's better that you can manage the slide from.
Okay, yes, I will do so now.
Okay, so warm greeting from Ministry of Environment, and good morning, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Dr. Moeko, for your very special moderator for this session, and also thank you KS for inviting me to join this event. And first of all, I would like to say thank you UNDP for your kind technical and financial support to NCSD to develop a circular economy and other projects related with green development. And thank for the developing SCP roadmap or SCP scoping study as well. So this is very great that the result I have present today. Okay, next slide, please. As you may know that Cambodia has been undergoing rapid economic development coupled with growing population. This leads to surge of demand of national resources and energy. The increase of consumption and material and energy lead to growing the volume of waste in Cambodia. Next slide, please. The rapid growth of economic development and growth population and material need lead to surge of demand of national resources and energies, as I talked earlier, and this is also that the increased consumption of material and energy that growing the level of waste and air pollution or pollution to the environment, and lead to environmental impact and affect to biodiversity, species, and as well as affect to human health. Next slide, please. As a traditional way, traditional thinking, every country, including Cambodia, we have the daily life and run the business as a linear economy. It means that from the resource extraction to manufacturing, use of consumption, and generate of amount of waste. Such of thinking and action, we face ever-growing environmental challenges, including natural resources, and also that which eventually this is the time that every country must thinking about the transition from the linear economy to the circular economy. Next slide, please. And the circular economy model will help. Okay. Hello, do you hear me? Good. Do you hear me, Dr. Moeko? Oh,
Yes,
I didn't
Yes, we hear you. We hear you. Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay, it's good. Okay, now it's a time to that we transition the nonlinear economy to a circular economy, because the model is through the closing the loop of the entire value of chain and maintain the value of product, material, and resources for a long possibility, as even create new additional value of the economy. Next slide, please. So there are some things that we have been done in NCSD, and also that working with development partner to thinking about preparing the sustainable consumption and production, and also that as a royal government of Cambodia very committed to achieve the SDG, especially SDG number 12. So we are now in working with developing a roadmap. And as you know, that the sustainable consumption and production is a holistic approach to minimizing the negative environmental impact from the consumption and production system, while promoting quality of life for all, according to the activity or the strategy that we have been set. So we need thinking about how we work for that one, and start from that from the use of resources. We should be good management on resources, and also until to generate the waste. Next slide, please. So we know that everything is very going well, because what we develop also we very thinking about the profit and benefit of them. And as you know that the SCP and the circular economy very benefit to the environmental and public health, and we will also protect the environmental and natural resources, sustaining primary economic sector, and also that agriculture, tourism, ecotourism, and also that in terms of manufacturing, that depend on the quality of natural resources. And will also that benefit to increasing Cambodia resilient to the climate change and disaster risk, and very help to enabling sustained economic growth, and also that increase resource efficiency through new technology and business practice, reducing the cost and business production process. And lastly, that we can see that this economy and SCP will have to generate new job and sustainable green economy. Next slide, please. There's some key goal that we have mentioned in our circular economy strategy and action plan for 2021. Because already present on that spot. So I very provide some sort related with the CE goal. So this is the goal is to enable the country to eventually close the loop of entire value or chain by minimizing of resource and energy inputs as well as the waste, while maximizing the resource value and creating the new economic opportunity for the country. The circular economy strategy and action plan also to identify a priority area to enhance economy and environmental and social outcomes, such as promote production, resource and repair, and increase recycling, composing, energy recovery, and ensure environmental control at the waste management, and also that improve effectiveness of waste collection, management, and segregation and transport. And this is a very consider very committed for the Ministry of Environment. Right now we are revising the structure, revising the policy, and identify the key partner to work for the waste management and transportation. And also that in the circular economy, we consider on sustainable use of energy and increase sustainable reuse of waste generation. And those we need to work and close work for not just environment, Ministry of Environment themselves, but we need to partnership with other development partner, private sector, and that's why we are working with UNDP to have a private sector platform, and especially to promote environmental education and awareness raising. Great issue and waste management into the some curriculum, national curriculum, and other training and workshop. Next.
Yes.
And so you got that? Okay. So regarding to the ICP Cambodia, recently, as Clemens just mentioned, that by supporting from UNEP and EU South Asia, we are now finalizing scoping study, and this scoping study we use this information and funding from that to develop ICP roadmap in Cambodia. So from that this scoping study, I think that we can see that a lot of gap and challenges in Cambodia. Those ICP concept introduced in Cambodia a long time ago, but we still have some gap. As I showed you in the screen, that residual policy and law, coordination and responsibility and research, and also that gap of human resources related with improving the use, the concept of ICP, and also that some kind of implementation of ICP, and also that there are some funding related with the incentive for the private sector, that as we may know that mostly private sector are very work close with manufacturing or industry and the civil society. That this is we need to have a scheme for an incentive scheme, and also that there are some the Ministry of Media still have limited consumer joy, and that we must repeat to learn from this and
it seems that we lost Excellency. Please wait for a moment until she comes back. I think the connection these days is not so good in Phnom Penh. It seems that she's taking a little bit time to get back to the online. So maybe while we are waiting, I can maybe explain a little bit like a SOCI strategy being already approved and SCP roadmap being drafted, and there was already extensive consultation this week. They're focusing on different sectors. Excellency Dr. Lina? Oh, you're back. Okay, yes.
Yes. Okay, so
Please.
very thank you. I'm very sorry for the internet very low here. And yeah, I know that, these all are the gap and challenges that we use as a reference, as a basic for formulation of ICT roadmap in Cambodia. Next slide, please. Okay, and so from our ICT roadmap, we also identify kind of principle of sensible consumption and production. First, we are thinking about improving the quality of life. And second is decoupling economic growth and applied life cycle thinking, and also data gathering is monitoring resources as well. So this is one of the key principle in our roadmap. Next slide, please. So from the scoping study, we also found some key sector that will improve to develop that ICT roadmap. And from our consultation and meeting with the line industry development we found building tourism procurement agriculture and forestry, water education.
We lost.
From this setting sector, we build five strategic pillar and relevant sector of ICT roadmap for 2021 to 2020. Investment and I think that we also found that we need to be considered in the future, and this is very linking to institutional arrangement, and especially the NCSD and to work and facilitate with line ministry and other development partner, private sector. So the next step for this ICP, we need to be finalize it and launch and dissemination that, and this is our dissemination. We need to be considered for as a national and subnational level. And also that we need to provide certain training workshop to integrate and provide understanding on the concept of SCP and action that we have mentioned in our roadmap. And also that we need to integrate to the education system. And also this is we find that this is very important role of gender, so we need to like mainstreaming this SCP to the gender as well. Another issue that we need to consider on developing kind of policy and regulation related with those sectors that we have mentioned in our SCP roadmap, and also that may related with regulation and guideline and certification, eco-labeling, or this eco-packaging. And the main issue also that we need to work with the stakeholder, I mean that development partner, UN, bilateral and private sector, especially that during that special economic zone, SME or government industry. And
Nancy, Dr. Lina, so sorry, if I could request for another 1 or 2 minutes to finish the presentation, that would be very much appreciated.
I think that's about finish it.
Okay.
I think that I'm coming the last slide already.
Ah, okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, I could not hear.
Okay, I said that.
Sorry.
Okay, and so this is a main issue related with the launching and policy regulation, stakeholder engagement, and also that thinking about financial support to, I mean that there are some activity related with financial advocacy, because this is a new concept. We need to further discuss and negotiate with the government for domestic support, national budget, and social environmental fund, and also that we need to discuss and negotiate with the international support to support the implementation as well. So I mentioned earlier that monitoring and evaluation also are very biannual learning and sharing the best practice as local or globally. So I think that this is all for my presentation. I'm very sorry for the internet unstable and interrupt for you all. So thank you, Dr. Moeko.
Thank you very much for sharing a very the elaborated presentation about the circular economy and SCP roadmap, which are very important milestone for Cambodia in achieving green economy. So thank you very much for your valuable time and the information for this. So now I go to my own presentation. So wait a moment. Share screen. So I hope you can see the screen. Yes. Can you hear us? Hear me? Okay, so I will, okay, great, thank you. So Excellency, Dr. Lina talked about circular economy. So like now we have a strategy. So how we can implement strategy into like the plastic management, which have been repeatedly debated during this the West Summit. So this presentation about the promoting circular economy measure for tackling plastic pollution. I wanted to share this picture. So actually, Excellency Dr. Lina, I visited Sihanoukville to look at the situation there. And this is the picture taken in the one canal. The local government placed a net across canal to capture plastic waste to prevent them flowing to the ocean. The local government said that it's very difficult to fight plastic pollution because the government cannot alone tackle this pollution, but many like the government, the private sector and citizen also generate plastic waste and dispose waste into the waterways. So joint action.
Yes? Sorry, it's not full screen and the slides are not moving. Now you're muted.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Stop share. So I do again. Can you see the screen? Okay, great. So what the government officer was saying that the joint action is needed to prevent plastic pollutions in Cambodia. This is happening in the context of economic growth and the population growth that the Excellency Dr. Lina talked about, that led to the surge in the waste volume. So within a 12 years time that Cambodia's the municipal waste they increased more than 3 times from 350,000 tons to 1 million tons in Phnom Penh. And if you look at the composition of waste, and it constitutes around 20%, according to 2015 figure, it can be more. So out of that the waste generated, around the 63% is formally collected across the country, and around 30% is illegally dumped or burned. And informal sector plays a very important role for recycling of 88%. In the case of Phnom Penh, there are around 2,000 people working in the informal sector, and they're playing a very important role in collecting waste for recycling, which will be also talked about by the Dr. Eitel's presentation. Sorry. So there are different challenges with growing plastic waste and pollution. One is that adding pressure on existing landfill, and also limited capacity in Cambodia for plastic recycling. At this moment, less than 1% of the all plastic waste being recycled in Cambodia. And also burning and illegal disposal of plastic waste is common and highly polluting. And also the large volume of plastic waste going to waterways, causing also marine plastic pollutions, affecting the biodiversity in the ocean. Yes. So in order to tackle this, the plastic pollution, that royal government of Cambodia has been promoting 4 Rs, which stand for refuse, reduce, reuse, and recycle of plastic. So then promoting circular economy measures for plastic management. The circular economy strategies present waste management hierarchy presented here. What is most important is waste prevention at source, and then the reuse and repair, and then the waste that can be recycled should be recycled, and the one that cannot be recycled should be sent for waste to energy, and minimal amount of waste should be going to this disposal. So if you translate this the waste management hierarchy to the plastic management, what needs to be done is, one is minimization of a single-use plastic and promotion of alternatives, and also the operationalizing of extended producer responsibility scheme. And if when the waste is generated, then waste need to be separated into plastic waste and non-plastic waste, and the 100% collection is needed. And the prevention of plastic burning, illegal dumping is also a priority. And the one that's generated should be also going to recycling and waste to energy as deemed appropriate. So Cambodia's approach for tackling pollutions have different elements. One key element is policy and regulations to change behaviors of target stakeholders. But in order for regulation to be effective, people need to understand why plastic is a problem and how they can be part of the solution. So then together it's possible to engage different stakeholders. But in order to have effective the reduction and recycling of plastic waste, all stakeholders need to be engaged. The private sector especially plays a very important role for the transformational change through business innovations and investment. And the citizens also participations are very important for taking the 4R action. And then also Dr. Eitel will talk about how important the informal waste pickers to be integrated in the circular economy model, so that recycling sector will be also socially responsible with the engagement of the informal waste pickers. And technical and financial support will be also very important to realize that the effective reduction of recycling and plastic waste. So I'm going to talk about what have been done and going to be done in coming years. So for policy regulations that Cambodia have developed a number of policies, as you see in the slide. For regulation, I'd like to highlight there's a subdegree 168 on management of plastic bags. And there's a new subdegree being drafted on plastic management, which is very important as it will introduce new measure on single-use plastic, EPR, and recycling. And for strategic communication for awareness raising, together with the Ministry of Environment, we also work extensively for awareness raising materials and posters, music video, and concert to outreach the target population in the effort to change their behaviors. And the stakeholder engagement that I talk about, that everybody needs to be involved in fighting this the plastic pollution. Then one of the important actor is a private sector to bring a scalable investment and also innovation to tackle this challenge. His Excellency Dr. Lina mentioned that's the circular economy private sector platform being developed that aim to disseminate information to target the industry, how they could change their model to more circular one. For example, this poster is developed targeting at the restaurants to reduce plastic waste, and also National Forum on Plastic. So we need to also bring together everybody on the stage to discuss how we can jointly implement activities. So we have done this, the National Forum together with the Ministry of Environment in 2019. This year also we are planning to have another forum in November or December, so coming soon. And business development for alternatives and plastic recycling. I mentioned about right now that's the limited capacity of a plastic recycling that's processing less than 1% of plastic waste. We need to look at how Cambodia could invest and also expand the businesses for plastic recycling. But at the same time, in order to the people also shift from plastic product to alternatives, we also need to look at the potential of alternative businesses as well. So as a priorities, what we are going to do is for this month, that we are going to trying to identify business solution alternatives. So innovation challenge for alternative to plastic will be announced this month for different businesses, packaging and e-commerce to join the challenge, like innovations to bring about solutions for this the plastic issue. And another one is a pilot for extended producer responsibility and also C measures. So together with Ministry of Environment from again like this month to next year, we are hoping to test how we can promote plastic recycling, how can we promote refilling services for hotels, how can we identify possibility to promote a C model for the garment sector, which is already operational in Vietnam, but in the case of Cambodia, not yet to be operationalized. So we want to also see the opportunities there. And based on this kind of support, we are going to also identify what kind of support is needed for business solution for plastic recycling alternatives from next year. And last but not the least, what is more important is also implementation of priority measures on the ground. So under the Marine Plastic Project, we are going to target Phnom Penh, Siem Reap, and the Sihanoukville. We have done scoping research to identify the waste volume and composition and what kind of priority measure need to be implemented. So under this project, these subnational government are going to lead the implementation of priority measures to promote 4R. So this is all from me. Thank you very much for listening. So if you have a question also for Excellency Dr. Lina and also myself and also Mr. Clemens, please put your question in the comment box. So with this, I will hand over to Dr. Eitel.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we have only 15 minutes left. I try to keep myself short, but this is a bit problematic. But anyway, so I'm going to share my screen. So can you see it full screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Moeko, for leading this panel, and thank you for the previous presenters for their very interesting presentations. So I will talk today a little bit in 10 minutes about the so-called informal recycling sector, especially about waste picker groups. As Moeko already said, I have done extensive field research during 2017 and 2019, especially in Phnom Penh, and especially among waste picker groups. So what we have heard already is that Phnom Penh and Cambodia has a serious waste problem. And at this point, I want to mention and highlight that waste is also quite heterogeneous. So we are not talking only about plastic waste, actually, but also about aluminium, about paper, and for example, also garment, textile waste and medical waste foremost, especially nowadays an important topic in Cambodia and around the world. So as the waste per se as a material is very heterogeneous, also the recycling sector is very heterogeneous. 1/3 of the total waste consumption are recyclable materials, and actually there is a functioning so-called informal recycling economy in Phnom Penh, for example. Moeko just told us about 2,000 waste pickers in the city. I have numbers about 3,000. I think this is very unclear how many waste picker and waste picker groups are actually really making out a living of recycling and picking up waste in the city and in Cambodia at all, there because there's a lack of data in the whole country, especially regarding the sector, what we heard previously too. So what we have also heard already is there are ongoing political negotiations on the introduction of such a circular economy approach. So who are people working in the recycling sector actually? So there are different actors who are actually picking up, collecting, and also buying recyclables from households. And that is on the first hand, solid waste management companies. That means people who are actually not supposed to collect recyclables do it anyway. So for example, men behind a truck collect recyclables out of the bins defined. So that is very little, and they make very little out of this, and selling it further to depot owners too. But still there are an accountable amount of people doing so. Then we have waste pickers living on dumping fields and adjacent to dumping fields and make their living out by selling recyclables there. And then we have a really huge amount of waste pickers, so-called HIs, in the urban of Phnom Penh, but also in different other cities and also in rural areas. I think that is a crucial point to know and also to consider for further approaches. And they actually often not so often sell, but they often buy recyclables from households. They pick up what they find in streets, and actually by doing so, they're actually greening the economy already by mitigating climate effects and greenhouse gases, because they're preventing that waste is actually being dumped. So they are the clean heroes of the city, I would say. So what happens afterwards, after the recyclables get picked up from streets and bought from households, they are directed further to so-called depot owners, middlemen, and intermediaries who will bring the materials out of the country eventually, because Cambodia has no or almost no significant recycling plants yet. So let's focus a little bit more on the waste picker groups. As you already recognize, I'm not talking about waste pickers per se, but about groups. That is because they are very heterogeneous and often they are organized in groups. That means they're mostly dependent on their depot owners in regard to their push carts, for example, because they are borrowed it, for example, from depot. So they are often organized in some communities. Predominantly, the sector is constituted by poor women, so there are also some men, especially by night. So there are a very little number of waste pickers picking up by night, and but this is very low number of people in the sector. So most of them are collecting and looking around the city by daytime, and they are mostly poor women. Often they earn actually the only income of the whole family. And they have a daily rhythm of collecting, buying and selling and recyclable waste at depots. They are actually part, and that is the crucial point here, they are part of a really functioning infrastructure. So in my opinion, the recycling sector can in this sense only viewed from their perspective and from a female perspective, especially something that should be considered. 1 second, I have few problems. Okay, I wanted to give you a short insight how such a daily rhythm looks like. So this is one of the waste pickers. Shortly, I have made in-depth research in especially three districts in Phnom Penh. So the one is Tutompong, Phnom Penh Tmoy, and Village Sok. And here, this is a waste picker actually in Tutompong, even though those waste picker, of course, loop around the whole city, and districts and borders of districts are not very significant for them. So it's just a marker for me to tell you where I have researched. And what you see here is that, okay, this card is actually quite empty. It was the beginning of the day. So they often start 1 or 2 a day. It depends on what is available on the streets and how many other waste pickers are actually also there collecting recyclables from the street and buying off from households. Actually, the longer waste pickers are in the business, the better they are connected with the households. So that means they have their own customers and know exactly which household they approach. They know each other, and often it's an official recycling system actually. So those people, those urban citizens know exactly when their waste picker come along, and they know their signals. So they have different signals, for example, the squeezing the horn or shouting at shy, for example. So there is a clear signal when people are arriving to collect recyclables, and this is very well functioning actually. Yeah, you also see the pushcart here. And that is not only a symbol for the HIs, but it's also it's also something which directs us to the interdependency of waste pickers to their depot owners. This is something which is sometimes quite crucial and not easy to explain too. So in some matters, it does not influence the relationship between depot owners and waste pickers at all, or not at most. But in other hands, in other regards, it's very determining. In the sense that waste pickers have borrowed or lent the pushcart, and it will last their actually their whole lifetime to pay it back somehow. So there is a really high dependence structure, which is important to notice. Okay, I have to go further because there are so many more slides. Here you can see in the depot how these recyclables, after they get collected, are distributed, and then they're separated according to the material art and on a kind of the material, and then directed further. First stuffed and packed in big rice bags, and then they are often collected. So the bigger depots, in bigger depots, it's like that. Trucks coming and picking up those rice bags, and in the smaller depots, it's like that they are driving with the trucks to the further intermediaries, the bigger ones. Yeah, and then the recyclables get weighted, and of course they get paid off for it. There are also some conflicting situations I want to emphasize here shortly. It's not so much about who owns the waste on the street and if there is some scarcity as waste as a resource on the street, because actually there's there's so much that there is not really a conflict about that. But what happens here, for example, I mean, it doesn't happen here, but what you see on the picture is a Sintry, for example, one of the operating solid waste management companies and one of the waste pickers. And it's not unusual that there are harassments from side of solid waste management workers in direction to waste pickers. Also, waste pickers, as I said, have a really minorized status also in society. They are poor, they are women, they are treated not well also by urban citizens often because they are regarded as impure too. So there are multiple burdens on their shoulder, I would say. Additionally, it comes that they take care not only of the earning of the family, but also of the children and often also about men. So there's multiple things to consider in this regard. Yeah, this is again a picture from the depot where you clearly can see how things get separated, maybe not so interesting for the moment. Okay. Okay, so we already heard a lot about the circular economy model. I just wanted to briefly show you the concept again and highlight here that this circle is actually very much determined by the aspect of material. So the whole circle is built around the category of material, in the sense waste, for example. And I think that this is not holistically enough because it provides, of course, some shortages. For example, social cultural effects are completely out of the scope. Then we have also a theoretical problem because it's not possible to close the loop per se, neither across nations nor within it, because it's just, you can't just close a loop. You cannot close the circle at this point. There are always some outcomes, some leakages at one another point. So this is just theoretical, not possible. Besides of the social cultural aspects, especially also gender dispositions are not included in that model at all. And of course, it's not providing any situated or local approach. So this is something each country has to find out on its own, which makes it very difficult actually. So what does it mean concretely? So there are several possibilities I could identify, and I'm very happy to answer further questions, but I guess we don't have any time, so you can also write me emails, of course, whatever. So the possibilities to integrate those waste pickers at a relevant group into the circular economy approach is possible, but not without broadening wider scope to certain aspects which are crucial in all daily life. So that is not something which is abstract, it's just how we live and what is important for those people. And it means also to integrate waste pickers, to involve them experts of the recycling sector today. So it would be rather good if there are representatives of waste pickers sitting here and explaining you their own situation. I am just a person who made research there, but actually I'm not a person to tell you that actually, because I'm a stranger to it somehow. So further, I already mentioned that there's a lack of data throughout the whole country regarding the waste management sector. That is especially true also for the so-called informal sector. That means that it's very crucial to really for an effective inclusion, it's crucial to make researchers, especially empirical, qualitative, in my opinion, but also mapping, something UNDP already has done with the depots. I really liked that, Moeko, what you have showed. Then it's very important to analyze and evaluate other attempts of integration based on unsuccessful example, for example, the Sabbaline community in Egypt, which is getting better there. But nonetheless, I think there are different international examples where waste picker groups got included somehow in a so-called formalized sector attempt or private investment with private investments, and it was quite unsuccessful. Due to different reasons, but that would be interesting to look at. And then last but not least, very important is to understand the role of the woman in this whole thing. So just the Cambodian recycling sector that is composed of mainly of these women waste pickers are very genuine in regard to other Southeast Asian countries, waste pickers group, for example, and those on recycling economies, also in India, for example. So because they are mainly constituted by women, and that is something which really I really should be considered in integrating them. So to understand the role of the woman, to understand their multiple burdens of care, their different and difficult status in society as waste pickers, but also per se as women and as poor women. So it's a triple burden actually. So yeah, I think it's very, very important to do so. Okay, so I come now to my last slide. So I appeal you or I suggest rather to have an integral and inclusive approach for a circular economy model. That means integral in so far that it encourages not only local situation, but takes also into consideration, to be taken in consideration, but also situational. That means not following the material, but following the practices. That means looking on how people are doing waste picking, for example. Where do they work? How are the procedures of collecting and selling? And by doing so, by following these practices, other constellations evolve, which has been otherwise out of the sight beforehand. You can't recognize, you can't find the relevant groups and the relevant ways of materials if you do not look at the practices and the daily rhythm of those waste pickers. And secondly, it's the inclusive part. So including the actual experts of the local recycling infrastructure into deliberations. It's the very first point, actually, in my own opinion, to really negotiate on the same eye level with those people. Yeah, thank you. That's it. And I'm happy to answer questions, of course.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eitel, for a very insightful the analysis and presentation about informal sector, and also like pointing to the existing shortcomings and also possibility for full integrations and inclusive approach for the way forward, and very, very helpful. The organizer said that it's okay to extend a bit an apology in advance to the participants in Cambodia. We are going to enter into a lunchtime, but maybe we will open for questions for 15 minutes or so. I see a question from Dr. Jinaida to the Dr. Eitel. Are there some experimental projects that enable operation of the waste pickers, for example, provision of sorting facility, work equipment, etc.? Also, it's fascinating that the informal collectors are women. Do men still play a role in the informal waste management sector? Over to you, Dr. Eitel.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe first to the first question. Yeah, I mean, I have somehow stopped my research 2019, and then also the pandemic overruled the whole world. So I haven't been in Cambodia since 2 years actually, and I cannot tell you exactly if there are up-to-date experimental collaboration with waste pickers. Back to the time I made my research, there wasn't anything. So actually there are 2 NGOs mainly working directly with waste picker groups in Cambodia, or in Phnom Penh, sorry, in Phnom Penh. Yeah, partly at the moment. So that is really an unrecognized and under illuminated sector there, I think so. And in this sense, there is no provision of work equipment or anything like that. That is also a problem, because those waste pickers, I mean, they are daily facing toxic threats, of course, and they don't use gloves, and often they do even not know about health problems, but often they do actually, and they decide very consciously against glove, because they say they cannot grasp the material sharply and sensitively anymore if they're wearing gloves, for example. So this is one thing. Yeah. Are there still men in it? Yeah, I mean, the whole recycling economy is structures according in regards to technical dispositions. So the male waste pickers, they, as I already said previously, are mainly collecting by night, and of course there are also some daily worker, male daily worker, but it's not a majority. And there are rather working in the solid waste management sector. That means that they are the people who are collecting solid waste from the households, and in this sense they are in the kind of in the infrastructure, they are a bit higher than those poor women waste pickers, and in the sense also how to say it, evoke a certain in certain regard some kind of hierarchy between the waste pickers and those male truck drivers, for example, or truck collectors. And the second aspect I just mentioned and forgot to say in the presentation is that the whole recycling sector is also ordered and organized around ethnical majorities, that is Cambodian, Vietnamese, and Chinese, for example, and that is exactly the role how it's situated in the infrastructure. So Cambodian people are often people working as waste pickers or in lower intermediate sector. Then we have the Vietnamese who are normally in the middle, and then we often have Chinese people transporting recyclables further abroad. Yeah.
And Dr. Eitel, another question from Sandy. Would it be helpful for Agile if we as individual participants for the entire neighborhood to use and the Agile could use to collect?
Yeah, that's one of the complex questions, I want to say. I mean, there are different ideas and endeavors to implement a more structured, or that's the point, a more effective maybe, because structured, it is already structured, very well structured. But yeah, a more effective waste collection system. And I am not 100% sure regarding the bins. I think that is personally, I think that's a good idea for when it comes to solid waste management. But in regard to recycling matters, I'm not 100% sure, as this is really something which is very deeply, these practices and the knowing that these waste pickers are the recycling infrastructure is very deeply inscribed in daily urban life. So this is not something which is surprisingly or something. It's just a thing of daily life. You know what to do with your recyclables. You sell it to the waste pickers. So this is already formalized. It would be rather a chance maybe to find more people doing this job maybe. But actually the structure of selling and buying and picking up is well formed.
And also one more comment from Dr. Jinaida. I also want to refer to this question because the UNDP India is working with Coca-Cola to engage in informal waste pickers as a formal partner for the waste collection. So this model could be maybe also considered for the Cambodians in the future. Related to that, so we are also looking at ways to integrate the informal waste pickers in a circular economy model, like recycling, pet recycling, etc. I know you have the recommendations, and do you have any concrete the recommendations for way forward? What would work if we want to integrate informal waste pickers into circular model?
I think the first point is to appreciate what they are doing. I really think that's the crucial point. And not to just overrun them, as it happens in different other countries, especially in Southeast Asia, but also in Asia, in other South Asian countries. So I think that is really crucial because those people are the expert of their own work. And it's not only about that they are making a living and that they want to stick in fine shops in garment sector or anything else. They are quite flexible in this sense, but it should be accepted that this is more, it implicates more than just the way how they make their living. It's a structuring and ordering system. It's a long tradition behind it. It also structures society in one another regard, actually. And I think it's not a good idea just to cut them off somehow or to delete them and implement a fully new system into the city or to the country, because that has definitely some ruptures and some outcomes, disturbing outcomes to social structures and who knows what else. So that is my overall opinion. But to be more precise, I think, as I said before, I think it's very important to include them in deliberation processes. It's not hard to approach them because they are everywhere, but it's hard to find people who are willing to function as a representative, because there is no workers' union. This, for example, in the garment sector, this is completely different. In the waste picker sections, it's hard to find people who are who you can approach easily. So, but it is possible actually, and there are two NGOs working in this matter, or has worked more intensively, not anymore so much, but anyway, that is Compact and Xaro, and especially Xaro has also worked with waste picker groups, and they had a really interesting, as I found, a very interesting system implemented, how they work with different waste picker groups in a village, which is now it's still in the urban area of Phnom Penh, and how they find representatives for political speakmen for each little group, and then at the end of a month or whatever, in a certain rhythm, those people met together and discussed also conflicts arising between these waste picker groups, for example, or what else just occurred. So this is a really nice system, but I'm not sure how much or if it's still working at the moment. But this might be an idea. Yeah, I think the point is to really integrate them in the deliberation processes.
Excellent. It seems that your presentation really triggered a lot of questions, and that I said maybe for the interest of time, this will be the last question from the Mr. Riti. The informal waste sector plays an important role in waste recycling flow. However, they have to pay for the waste generators who are supposed to pay tipping fee for the generated waste to be treated properly. How do you see this system?
Yeah, I have to read the question again, sorry. What do you mean with waste generators? Maybe you can just clarify that.
It means like a normal household normally when they sort out the recyclable waste and then they just keep it for sale to the scavenger. You know, some they sell, some they give free of charge or something like that. But it's make people forget that they are responsible for their waste generation. It's in contrast in a developed country that, for example, if you throw away the TV, it doesn't mean you want to take the money from the treated facility. Actually, you have to pay for the TV that you have to give to them. It's different from our country or in developing countries. So this kind of system, what you think is challenge to motivate or encourage the informal sector in this system. Thank you.
Thank you. If I get it right, I mean, the whole system actually is based on a reciprocal exchange, receiving something else. So without that, it wouldn't be possible to uphold such a recycling or economic activity, actually. So I think it's a crucial aspect of how the system works, actually, and it's not at the moment not valued from my side in any regard to any direction in the sense. It becomes problematic if there are different dependencies. I mean, there are a lot of dependencies, of course, between the households and the waste pickers, for example, for those of the intermediaries and those who bring this stuff abroad. But until these dependencies are in one another way stable and not too much hierarchical in one direction, it works as a system, even though you have also different, as I said, for example, harassment problems, which can be, I think, can be that I don't want to say that that is not important to consider. I just want to say that the system from a structural perspective is working because there is this exchange aspect, which is crucial to the economic activity per se, by the way. But yeah.
Okay, wonderful, Dr. Eitel, for answering so many questions. I think it's really into a lunchtime for people in Cambodia. So I would like to close this session, but I would like to send a sincere thanks to express sincere thanks to the speakers for sharing a valuable insights into a circular economy and the SCP and the way forward. Also the participants for joining these sessions. We look forward to further collaboration in this area. Thank you so much, and have a nice lunch to everybody. Thank you.